heavy. All right, so we're going to continue on with some more jQuery stuff. And last week we did all kinds of stuff with the selectors. And what did I say about the various selectors they have? What did I say was the easiest thing to use, right? Don't use them, right? That's my own opinion, but it's likely. I've actually had some interview questions where they ask about these selectors, and they get some vague selector, and you have to figure it out. And that's fine for an interview question, but in reality, I wouldn't use them. I just use. It's so much easier to use an ID for these things. Now, there are some cases where you can't, but almost all cases that I can select a portion of my website through an ID and then use some child selectors on top of that. So I drill right to the point where I want to get, and then I might add some HTML or do some functions after that. But most of the time, I'm going straight for an ID, and it just cuts through a lot of stuff there. So let's take this this particular site here. If I wanted to target this block of HTML and do something with it, how would I change that? How would I do that? What? All right, set the ID for it, right? So let's go find that. That's my second heading. Now I could go through and use the second heading and the nth selector and all that kind of stuff, but it's going to be my second heading. There's one, there's two. I'm going to give this entire div an ID of the one I want. So this is change me, whatever. So now I can utilize that ID in my jQuery selectors to play with, and I can say, how do I get an ID on the page using jQuery? $. Everything is in quotes. Remember, it's a string. Quote sharp, because that's the selector for an ID, just like it would be in CSS. And I say, change me. All right, and that gives me the ID. And if I highlight it, Chrome nicely highlights it. That's exactly the one I want, right? Which is pretty cool. So given this selector now, this is a jQuery node. This gives me access to all kinds of things. I can execute jQuery node type stuff on it, right? It's an object like a Ruby object. It lets me execute functions on that node. So we can assign that to a variable. That makes it easier. I can say this div, and in fact, it's much more efficient. It's much more efficient if I'm going to access that same div several times to save it as a variable, because there is a little overhead in trying to get jQuery to find that ID in the document object model, in the DOM. So if I get it once, I'm saving it. I don't have to go through jQuery again to get it again. So that's a performance enhancement to do that. So now I can just say A, and I can call A.methods on it, like hide. And it goes away. And in that case, everything floated to the left. So it was here, and this one got floated to the left and took its place and left a blank over here. All right? And I can say A.show, and it puts it back into place. So it's still there. It's just taken out of the DOM temporarily. If I reloaded the page, would it be there or not?
Yes.
It would be there because I'm starting over from scratch with the new HTML that I have there. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be typing this in the console when I deploy this, right? I'm going to be putting this JavaScript into a JavaScript file, and we're going to be playing with it. But it's easier just to show some of the functions in the console. Okay? So I can also, given that, there are other things I can do with it. Like I can change the CSS. Or I can, I can change the CSS and say I want the background color to be blue. And it changes it to blue. Isn't that cool? So that's all well and good. That's all fun. But it's more fun when we actually tie some user interaction to changing this. Obviously, I could have just done this in CSS. I don't need jQuery. I don't need to change it when the page loads. The only reason I need jQuery is to do dynamic things in response to user input. When the user does something, I want to change something on the page. That's typically why I need jQuery. Otherwise, I just do it all statically in the CSS. Everybody see that? So all I've done here can be done straight in the CSS. So let's do some things like let's add some information so that when I click this button, I want to do something. Okay, so this is some interaction that I want to have happen when this button gets clicked. Okay, so now we're going to get into JavaScript functions. So let's find that button. Where is that button? It is in here somewhere. It's an A tag that actually has an href in it. So that's maybe a little more complicated for now. Let's add our own button. Let's just make a div that has a class of the button. Button primary, and button large. Push me. Where? There's no Hungarian in there. These are the classes. Where am I getting these classes from? Bootstrap, right? Those are the Bootstrap classes. So there's no Hungarian here at all. And that's actually not. It's more like what Tom would do in C#, though. BTN, whatever, right? So this is the push me button, and it doesn't have to be anything. I can put that class using the Twitter Bootstrap now on anything I want, any type of element, and it changes it to a button. But it doesn't do anything, right? Obviously. I've got text in there, it doesn't do anything. So I want to make something happen when this button gets pushed. So to do that, we want to target it because we're going to get some jQuery. We're going to target this particular button. Where did my button go? Ah! That's exactly what I'm going to do. There we go. So let's add an ID, and we'll call it push me. All right, this is my push me button. So I can, in my console, go and get that data. I can say A equals $, push me. Make sure that that's going to be correct. That's correct. I can say a.hide just to remember that it's there. Good. A.show. And so that is targeting what I want. So let's add some JavaScript in here. And let's include a JavaScript file at the bottom. So we're going to load a new file. And this is going to be my own JavaScript, right? So this is Dave's.js, right? Whatever. You're going to load this external JavaScript file in from the JS folder. So I need to create the file. We're going to call it Dave's.js. And in here, we can put any JavaScript script we want, right? Any JavaScript. Just like if we were to put it in the file itself, this is like CSS. We typically keep our JavaScript files and our CSS files different from our HTML, right? So inside of this, I need to start adding some of the stuff that I've done in the console. And I could do something like I could say make this bigger. this particular button, push me, that's a French word, and I can say hide, all right, just to make sure that this is going to work. So when I reload this page, the button should disappear, right? Not very useful, but it ran my JavaScript, right? So typically when we're doing JQuery things, we need to work off of this concept. We need to make sure that the page has been loaded correctly and completely before I can change any of the document object model. I want to make sure that it's completely ready to go. And so jQuery has this function called ready, right? So let's see if I can find it in the documentation. Okay, .ready. So it's a method that we execute and do something with. So this is typically how we start our jQuery. This is, we want to make sure that the document, the whole entire document object, is ready to be done something with. That means it's completely loaded, it's got everything parsed into memory, it's created the object model for everything. Why? No. No. So this is how you see most jQuery things happen. This is a function. Now this is what they call an anonymous function, meaning it doesn't have a name, right? And you'll be talking about those in your JavaScript class. If you haven't, good. So this is what they call anonymous because it doesn't have a name. It's just called function, and that has curly braces around it to encapsulate everything I want to do inside of that function. And I'll take away the comment. This right parentheses is part of this ready function. So I'm passing in a function as a parameter to the ready function that's called on this document object. So this is the selector saying, give me the entire HTML document, call this ready function on it, pass in this anonymous function to do something whenever this happens. So whenever the document is ready, I want to execute all of these lines of code in here. That's basically what it's doing. So I'm going to move my hide up here, and that will only execute when the file is completely parsed. All my stuff is going to be in here. I'm going to have 1,000 lines of code inside of my document ready, typically. That's typically how I would do that. No. One document ready function per page. That would be ideal. Kind of like an initialize. Yeah, very good. Yeah. All right, so let's just run it again. I mean, obviously it better work. And it loads it, and the button is gone. But the button is still there. It's just hidden. So I could still select it. I could say, get me the push me button and show it. Okay, it's still there in the object model. I just hid it. So let's do something. We want to do something when they click the button. So they have a method called click in the jQuery, and so you should always have this jQuery up and running here. We want to look for the click method. And what this does is it's a mouse event that the browser takes care of. Now, you can write this all in JavaScript without jQuery completely. You can determine where the mouse is, what the mouse has done, and these are typical events. So it's so popular that we want to add a click to something that they made a method out of it. So what that does is all we want to do is create some anonymous function, again, another anonymous function that's going to be called whenever that event happens. So the browser takes care of the handling the event, and we just say we want to do something inside that. So I'm going to call the click method, and inside of here is going to be another anonymous function, so we don't name it, and it has its own set of curly braces, right? So this is typically how you see things formatted. You have a curly brace and a parenthesis because this anonymous function is being passed as a parameter into this method. I know it starts to look a little weird. Right, it's going through a bunch of passing through parameters here. So this function, what I want to do is do something like let's take that other div that I have, because I don't want to kill my button. I want to look at something else. So let's take that change me and do something with that instead. All right, so I can look up the change me just like I would before. It's an ID. And I say, whenever this happens, I'm going to hide this method. Yes, I do. All right, and we used standard semicolons to end our statements, just like JavaScript. This is JavaScript that we're writing. So let's run my little guy over here, reload it, and I'm going to have to make it larger probably. So the change me is this guy. So when I hit push me, that one should go away. Dink. Or this one goes away, one or the other. Let's see, let's reload it. Where was it? It must be this one that goes away. No, it is this one. It's hard to tell, isn't it? So let's let's change the color of the one that we're going to disappear, and we can do that just as a separate line. It doesn't have to do anything, has nothing to do with the clicking function. So let's look up my change me, because that's the one I'm going to hide. And I'm going to say CSS, and we'll change the background color.
Well, if you do that, it's going to hide it.
Yeah, I know, but not right away. All right, so when the document is ready, I'm going to change the background color of an existing guy, semicolon, and then this is only going to be executed when? When the button is clicked. So it's called an event handler that only gets executed when this event occurs in the browser. So it's like a function you've set aside for the future. If they never click that button, that code will never get executed. All right. So there's the one that should get disappeared. And this one will come up and replace that. That's the way that's going to work, just because of the floating aspect. So when I hit push me, that one goes away, and the other one from the second line comes up and replaces it.
It'd be easier to tell which one's which if you put like a number after each of them.
That's probably true.
You put an ID on it.
Yep. So when I push it again, it's going to call the function again. But what happens? It's already hidden. It hides it again. Doesn't do anything special, right? I'd have to have a different ID here.
He doesn't have an ID on it.
I don't have an ID on it. That's a whole different thing. Then you'd have to use specific selectors. And I don't ever do that. So
It's not going to happen.
it's not going to happen. You can want all you want, but it's just not going to happen. All right, so let's add another button just to show you some more stuff. Let's add another button. And notice that this is a div. That has no button, that has no form associated with it or anything, but I've made functionality out of clicking a div. Isn't that cool? I clicked a div and I had something happen.
How is it more difficult to do that same thing with your A tag?
Well, we can play with it. I think I have trouble with the return and following the A tags link. It's a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to call this push me one. Oh, we can do push. Oh, there you go. That's good. We'll do pull me. Push me, pull me. Push me, pull you. It should be a pull you, right? That's a Dr. Doolittle reference for those of you that know how to read. You, or watch TV or whatever. Pull. They have a lot of books. I've read all of Dr. Doolittle books. All right, anyway, that's useless information. So I've got two buttons, which are just divs. Reload my page. I've got a push me and a pull you. And the pull you doesn't do anything, but the push me hides the heading, hides one of these divs. So let's go back to my JavaScript and do something. I want to add a new function for the pull you ID. So I can copy the same code. That was weird. What the heck? There we go. So I'm going to look for the ID of pull you instead, and I'm going to have a function, and instead of hiding it, I want to show it, all right? So it'll bring it back. And again, this is just a div that I'm applying an event handler to that reacts when I click on that div. And the div happens to be styled like a button. So see how you can change the whole face of this. I don't need to worry about forms as much anymore. I can just click on the div itself and do something. It doesn't have to look like a button. So let's look at that. Reload. So I can push it. That pushes it in the background. I can say pull you, and it pulls it back. Isn't that great? Isn't that amazing? So if I pull you multiple times, it doesn't do anything. It's already showing. Push me multiple times. It's calling that method. And to show you that we can actually stop on that, let's look at the source. If I can find it in here. It's is it resources? Probably is. So here's my JavaScript that I wrote, and I can put breakpoints in here. I should be able to. Why can't I? All right, still getting used to Chrome. You have to hit the Sources tab and then select the file that you want from here. And I want my dave.js. And now I can put breakpoints in here. And I can look at variables. So if I reload the page, actually this doesn't matter. I'm going to call the push me, and it breaks right here. And right now it's going to go out and do the selector, find the change me ID, and call the hide method on it. So if I just run it again, it hides it. And here's the pull you, stops in the pull you. It's on the click method. And that will get run every time because it's a handler. It's a piece of code that's been attached to that particular div that happens to look like a button. So that's code that's always going to be executed no matter where you are in your page or your code. The browser will execute that piece of code if you click on that particular element. Okay? So I can do the same thing. It doesn't have to be a button. Let's say I want to click on this heading instead to hide it. So the heading in change me. Now this might be one case where I'm going to target the change me, but I only want to click. I want the click to happen on the heading only. Okay, so how would I target the heading as a child of the change me ID? All right, descendant selector. So how do I write that? $, change me. We don't have to do first child. All right, so that's an H1 that's underneath a change me ID. And that will actually find the first one. It'll find all of them if there are multiple H1s, But in this case, there's only one, so I don't have to worry about that. So there's only, oh, it's actually an H2. So I'm going to have an H2 instead. Do I have more than one?
Yeah.
Not in that div, though.
Oh, no, not
Right? Inside of this div, as a child of the change me ID, I only have one H2. All right? Does everybody see that? Any questions on that? All right. So in my JavaScript, that will do that. I want to target the change me and then the H2 that's a child of that change me ID. And on that, I want to add a click function, anonymous click function, that's going to do the same thing as a hide. Okay? And this is actually going to hide its parent, the entire div. Probably, but this is going to work. I know, but yeah, I could. I don't want to get into this yet. I don't want to get into this yet. We'll get into this in a minute. All right, so now this heading has a clicking function on it that if I click it, it goes away. Isn't that cool? I don't have to have a button. I can click on any element I want by adding an anonymous clicking function to that element. That's an Easter egg, right? Because it's not very user-friendly. It's the UI doesn't match that, right? It's not intuitive. Right. And that's gone. So yeah, right. There is, because I have a pull U, and that should work back, but I'm breaking there, so let's take my breakpoints off, and there you go. So now I can pull it back. There's no way to get it back, right? So a lot of places use this. You might have a widget type box that the top is black and the bottom has your text in it, kind of like Google's homepage, where they've gone away from that. Actually, it's what was it called? iGoogle. Thank you. I think they don't have it, or they're not going to have it. But you see these little headers here at the top? You can click on those and move them around, and that's all done with JavaScript. Same kind of thing. So I can add a clicking function, and some people do this where you double-click it, and it shrinks it. It puts all the content away, and you double-click it again, it will open it up again. So there's a double-click method as well as just a click method. DBL click, exactly right. DBL, there's not a triple click. So there's a double-click, and let's see if that still works. They keep deprecating stuff that I use, and it irritates me. Oh, iGoogle is, yeah, definitely. But now a single click doesn't make my heading go away, but a double click should. Look at that, see? So it's a double click event handler that's been tied to that particular H2. So I could use selectors and give all of the H2s on my page. Forget about that it's a child of a change me. I want to make them all double click if they hit an H2. All right. Now, unfortunately, that's only going to change this one. So, but any of these here, I can double click on this guy, and this one will go away. See that? Isn't that cool? I can double click on any of these. Now, if I want to get rid of that particular guy, we can do something like Adam was saying. All right. So we can use the DOM if I'm in this, instead of always changing the change me guy, I want to look for something else. So there is a this query. Inside of the query, I can say this, and that represents what, do you think? the H2 object. The H2 object, whatever was clicked here, right? So the H2 object, and I want the parent of that because I want to kill the whole div. So the parent of this H2, I can just say parent. Give me the parent of that guy and then hide it. So that means for every H2 on the page, if I double click it, it's going to hide its parent. So if I had an H2 in the body, it would hide the whole body potentially, right? So you got to be careful with some of this stuff. So now this guy should hide itself by double clicking on my heading. Look at that. It moved over the other guy. Double click that one, it's gone. I can get rid of all of these guys. Isn't that great? Now it's nice. Isn't that great? All the H2s are gone. I wonder if this is an H2. Nope. All right. So across the entire page, that was given to me. And I can look at these. If you look at these H2s, they're still there in the document object model. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. All right, and notice how they all say display none in line. Where did that come from? From the jQuery button when I clicked hide, it added this class and said style it as a none. And here on the right, I can look down and look at all of the event listeners for these. So for this div, actually it'll be this heading, has an event listener of a double click. See that? And I can look at that on an H2, and it tells me what type of event is happening here. And it even shows the source code in the jQuery of what's happening here. So I can get at all of that cool information inside of that. Just tons of information, right? More than I ever needed. So in the console, how would I make all of my headings come back? All of my divs that I just hid, how can I make them all come back? All right, so let's go get them. Let's pull for all of the H2s. And what does that return? An array of H2 objects, right? And I could say $H2 sub 0 dot show. That would turn one of them back on. Oh, it's the parent, right? It's the no. Parent. Yeah, you're right. It was the parent. Nope. My H2 sub 0 is not. No. No, I was just going to show a quick one, but we can use other methods. There's an each method, just a lot like Ruby, that I can loop through all of my elements in the array. And this will give me one at a time. And so I want to do something with that object. And that object is going to be called this in this case. All right? So I'm going to call it with another anonymous function to be executed on every one of these to do something with. So let's see if I can get that to work in the console. That's just whatever, the 0 through whatever. That's going to be a number. All right, so I'm going to say $H2 dot each function, anonymous function, and then No, don't have to, because I don't care about the index. I'm not going to use the index. So for each one of these, I'm going to call the this dot parent dot show, right? All right, so let's do that. So we're going to select the this dot parent dot show. And I can't do this on multiple lines in the console, so I've got to fix this and make it work right here. All right, there they are. Bada boom, bada bing, got them all back. Isn't that cool? So they give you these each methods to iterate through an array of things, and then you can do something with each of these elements. And the $ parentheses this, is selecting the object that was given to me in the array. So it's going to give me this first heading first as an object, and then the second heading and the third heading, etc. And for that heading, I'm going to get its parent because I'm going to show the entire div again. And then for that one, I want to call the show method on. Isn't that cool? That's some cool stuff, man. If you've ever tried to do this in JavaScript by itself, you'd be hanging yourself about now. I'm telling you, it's so painful to traverse the DOM and keep it cross-platform compatible. So this will work in IE as well. So that's it for today. We'll do some more of this tomorrow.